John adjusted his tie one final time before stepping out of his car, parked a discreet distance from the sprawling estate where his daughter Brenda's wedding was being held. The sun set behind the grand mansion, casting long shadows that mirrored the tightening in his chest. He hadn't seen Brenda in over 3 years, not since the court ruling that limited his visitations to letters and occasional supervised phone calls. Letters that returned unopened, calls that went unanswered. He navigated through the meticulously manicured gardens, his footsteps muffled by the lush grass. The estate was more magnificent than he had imagined, with its towering columns and sweeping balconies adorned with flowers and fairy lights. He knew he wasn't welcome, that his presence would cause a stir, perhaps even a scene, but he had to see her, just once, from afar, on her happiest day. Finding a little used side door, John slipped inside and ascended an ornate staircase leading to the upper galleries. The wedding ceremony was set in the grand ballroom below, a cavernous space echoing with the soft prelude of a string quartet. He found a secluded alcove with a clear view of the altar, shrouded by shadows and heavy velvet drapes. As he settled into his hidden perch, he heard a whisper behind him, soft but unmistakable. "Didn't think you'd miss this, did you?" Gloria's voice was low and teasing, carrying a hint of amusement and surprise. John spun around, his heart skipping a beat. "Gloria, you scared me," he hissed, keeping his voice down. Why are you here?" "Oh, I wouldn't miss my niece's wedding. But you, John, really, this is reckless even for you." Gloria stepped closer, her dress rustling softly. She looked around nervously, making sure they were still alone. "Gloria, please, I just want to see her get married. I'll leave right after." "No one will even know I was here," John pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. Gloria eyed him skeptically, then sighed, her expression softening. "You look like hell, John. This really means that much to you." "It does. She's all I have left of her mother in a way. Please, Gloria." "All right, I won't rat you out. But you better stay hidden. If Janice's family sees you, this whole thing could blow up." Gloria warned, stepping back into the shadows as footsteps echoed in the distance. John nodded, turning back to gaze down at the ballroom. Below, guests were beginning to take their seats, the murmur of their conversations drifting up to his alcove. He watched, heart aching, as Brenda entered on the arm of her uncle, radiant and unknowing of her father's eyes upon her from above. In the quiet of his alcove, John felt both near and infinitely far from his daughter. This, he knew, was likely the closest he could get to her life now, an uninvited ghost at the feast of her new beginning. John watched from his hidden alcove as the guests settled into their seats, his gaze fixed on Brenda, who looked radiant and blissfully unaware of the drama her presence invited. The string quartet transitioned into a softer melody, the air filling with the scent of roses and the subtle hint of champagne. He let out a long, silent breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside him. Just as he shifted to get a better view, a faint rustling noise behind him made his heart leap into his throat. He turned sharply, coming face to face with Gloria, whose unexpected appearance in the dimly lit alcove made him stumble back against the wall. "John, you're like a cat on a hot tin roof. Relax, it's just me," Gloria whispered, her eyes twinkling with a mix of concern and mischief. "Gloria, you can't just sneak up on someone like that in a place like this. What are you doing here?" John's voice was a mix of annoyance and relief. "I could ask you the same, John. This is a family event, and last I checked, you weren't exactly on the guest list." Gloria folded her arms, leaning against the cool stone wall of the alcove. Her light tone did little to mask the underlying seriousness of her statement. "I just want to see her get married. That's all. I'll leave right after. I promise," John pleaded, his eyes not meeting hers. "Look, John, I'm not here to make a scene. I actually came to warn you. Janice's brother, Alan, he's here, and you know he's still got a bone to pick with you after everything that happened. Gloria's voice lowered even further, her gaze flickering towards the door as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. John felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Alan is here? I thought he'd be out of town. Plans change, and frankly, I'm worried about what will happen if he sees you. This isn't just about you or me. It's Brenda's day. Gloria stepped closer, her expression softening. Why put her through more drama? She deserves a happy day. I know. It was selfish to come. But I can't leave now. Not yet. I've come this far. John's voice cracked with emotion, his resolve wavering. Gloria sighed, her expression conflicted. Okay, but we do this my way. Stay out of sight. If you're seen, it won't just be awkward. It could ruin everything for Brenda. I'll keep an eye out for Alan. She paused, looking him over. You look like you could use a friend today anyway. Thank you, Gloria. Really, I owe you one, John murmured, feeling the weight of his choices more than ever. Just remember, we're doing this for Brenda. Not for you, not for me. For her. Gloria reminded him firmly, then slipped back into the shadows, leaving John to his vigil. As Gloria disappeared, John leaned against the cool stone, his heart a mixture of gratitude and guilt. He peered once more over the balustrade at the gathering below, each face a reminder of the life he once had, and the one he hoped to reclaim, if only through fleeting glimpses on a day that was supposed to be about celebration, not old grievances. As John watched the guests mill about the ballroom below, his mind drifted back to the early days with Janice. Each laugh and snippet of music from the wedding seemed to pull a memory from the depths of his heart, each more vivid than the last. He remembered the first time he met Janice, at a mutual friend's New Year's Eve party. She had laughed at one of his clumsy jokes, her eyes lighting up the room, and in that moment, he felt as if he had found a piece of himself he didn't know was missing. Remember how we danced until 3 a.m. at Mike's party? We were inseparable, John whispered to himself, a small smile playing on his lips as the memory warmed him. A sudden burst of laughter from the ballroom snapped him back to the present. His eyes scanned the crowd and stopped at Janice's mother, who was chatting animatedly with some relatives. The sight of her brought back a different kind of memory, darker, more painful. You never were good enough for my daughter, John. You know that, right? Mrs. Delaney had hissed at him once, during a particularly nasty argument, her words echoing in his head now. John flinched at the memory. He had tried, hadn't he? Tried to be the man Janice wanted, the father Brenda could look up to. But somewhere along the way, things had gone terribly wrong. His reminiscence was interrupted by Gloria's return. She slid next to him, her expression serious. You okay? You looked 1,000,000 miles away. Her voice was soft, concerned. Just thinking about the past, John sighed, shaking his head. How did it all get so messed up, Gloria? Life's messy, John. You know that. Janice wasn't perfect either. Don't put all the blame on yourself. Gloria nudged him gently, trying to offer some comfort. I know, but I can't help thinking about all the things I could have done differently, John confessed, his voice low. When Janice left, it broke something in me. She left a note, didn't she? What did it say again? Gloria asked, her curiosity tinged with a hint of caution, knowing this was sensitive territory. John swallowed hard, the words of the note burned into his memory. It said, John, I'm sorry to leave like this, but I need to find my own happiness. I can't do that here, not with you. I hope you can forgive me one day. Janice. He recited the note verbatim, each word reopening old wounds. And you never saw it coming? Gloria's question was gentle, probing not out of voyeurism, but a desire to understand. No, I didn't. We had problems, sure, but I never thought she'd leave. And then to take Brenda away from me, too. John's voice cracked with the old pain of betrayal and loss. Gloria reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. You've carried this for too long, John. Today needs to be about healing, not just reopening old wounds. Let's focus on Brenda, on making today a good memory somehow. John nodded, taking a deep breath. You're right. Today is about Brenda. I need to remember that. Together, they turned their attention back to the wedding, the past momentarily set aside as they focused on the present, on the possibility of mending what had been broken so many years ago. From his secluded vantage point, John watched as Brenda floated across the room, greeting guests with the poised elegance of her mother. His heart swelled with pride and a deep, inescapable sorrow. He remembered the little girl who would run to him with open arms after a day apart, her laughter filling the house, a stark contrast to the young woman below who hadn't spoken to him in years. The ceremony began, and John's focus was unyielding as Brenda approached the altar. The minister's words were a soft murmur compared to the loud beating of John's heart. Every vow punctuated what he had lost, and the reality that he was an outsider in his daughter's life. As the couple was pronounced husband and wife, applause erupted through the ballroom. John clapped silently, tears stinging his eyes. It was then that he felt a presence beside him. Gloria had left, and in her place stood Brenda. "What are you doing here, Dad?" Brenda's voice was cold, her eyes hard with anger and disbelief. John turned, startled, his emotions raw. "Brenda, I just wanted to see you get married. I promise I won't cause any trouble. I'll leave now." "You think you can just show up like this? After everything? You're unbelievable." Her voice was a whisper, but the vehemence was clear. "I know I haven't been what you needed, what you deserved," John stammered, his voice thick. "But I couldn't stay away, not today." "Save it, Dad. You've always been good with words, but they mean nothing to me now. Not after all these years." Brenda's words cut deep, each one landing like a physical blow. John looked down, unable to meet her gaze, his hands shaking. "I understand if you want me to go. I really do. Just know that I love you, Brenda. I always have. Love isn't enough. It never was." Brenda's response was bitter, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Before John could reply, she turned sharply and walked back towards the celebration, leaving him alone with his regrets and the stinging clarity of her words. As she departed, John felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Gloria, who had returned quietly. "I heard. I'm sorry, John. But maybe it's not too late to change things." Gloria's voice was soft, hopeful. "Maybe?" John whispered, but his heart was heavy with doubt. He knew the path to reconciliation would be long and fraught with pain, but seeing the back of Brenda's wedding dress disappear into the crowd solidified his resolve. "You have to try, John. For her, if not for yourself," Gloria urged, squeezing his shoulder gently. John nodded, his decision made. He would stay, at least for now, hidden in the shadows, watching the daughter he loved celebrate the beginning of her new life, hoping that someday she might find it in her heart to forgive him. After Brenda's harsh dismissal, John remained hidden in the alcove, his heart heavy with grief and rejection. He watched silently as the wedding guests danced and celebrated below, a stark reminder of the joy he was barred from sharing. Gloria, noticing John's despondence, slid next to him with a mischievous glint in her eye that seemed out of place with the somber mood. "John, moping isn't going to fix anything. How about we stir things up a bit, for old time's sake?" Gloria whispered, her suggestion carrying a hint of playful conspiracy. John turned to her, puzzled. "What do you mean, Gloria? This isn't the time for games." "Oh, come on. I'm not talking about crashing the party, just a little diversion to lighten your spirits. Trust me." She nudged him with her elbow, trying to coax a smile. Reluctantly, John smiled. His interest piqued despite his better judgment. "All right, what do you have in mind?" Gloria's eyes scanned the room below, before she pointed at a particularly pompous-looking man boasting loudly to a group of uninterested listeners. "See that guy? That's Brenda's new father-in-law, Roger. He thinks he's the king of trivia. I bet you can't stump him with a question he can't answer." John raised an eyebrow. "And how am I supposed to do that from up here?" "Oh, that's the easy part. I'll go down, challenge him, and then give you a signal. You shout out the hardest trivia question you can think of. If he can't answer, you win." Gloria's plan was whimsical, certainly, but it was just the kind of harmless fun John needed to distract himself from his heartache. With a reluctant chuckle, John agreed. "Okay, let's do it, but you owe me if we get caught." Gloria winked and made her way back to the party. Moments later, John saw her approach Roger, gesturing animatedly. The room's noise covered their conversation, but soon, Gloria looked up towards John and gave a subtle nod. It was his cue. Taking a deep breath, John called out from his hidden perch, his voice carrying over the music. "Hey, Roger, what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?" The question echoed strangely over the sounds of the party, drawing a few laughs and lots of confused looks. Roger, caught off guard, stammered and chuckled, unable to come up with an answer. Gloria laughed triumphantly and called back up to John. "Nice one. You got him." The room buzzed with laughter and light chatter about the bizarre interruption, and John found himself smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. Maybe Gloria was right. Perhaps a little levity was exactly what he needed. As the laughter died down, Gloria returned to John's side, both of them chuckling at their small victory. "See? Not all is lost, John. Sometimes you just need to find a way to laugh, even when it's hard." Gloria's words were light, but they carried a weight that resonated with John deeply. "Thank you, Gloria. I needed that," John admitted, feeling a slight lift in his spirits. "Just remember, John, life is short. Don't spend it all in the shadows. You deserve to be part of the celebration, too." Gloria's advice was gentle, a reminder of the stakes at hand. As the party continued below, John reflected on Gloria's words. He knew he couldn't change the past, but perhaps, with a little courage and a lot of patience, he might still change the future. As the night wore on and the wedding reception reached its peak, John sat quietly in his hidden alcove, the temporary joy from Gloria's game slowly fading. The earlier laughter felt distant now, replaced by the dull ache of unresolved memories. The weight of the past was pressing down on him, especially as the faces of Janice's family filled his view. Each one seemed like a reminder of the mistakes and decisions that led him to this place, an outsider at his own daughter's wedding. Suddenly, Gloria appeared again, slipping back into the shadows beside him. But this time, her playful expression was replaced with a somber one. "John, we need to talk," Gloria said, her tone unusually serious. John tensed. "What is it? Did something happen?" "It's about Janice. There's something I've been holding back, something you need to know." Gloria's voice was steady, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. John frowned, his heart rate quickening. "What are you talking about, Gloria?" "What more is there to know?" The night Janice left, it wasn't just about her wanting to follow Duke to Hollywood. It was more complicated than that. Gloria began, her eyes flicking to the ballroom below before locking onto John's. "Complicated how?" "She left a note, Gloria. She said she wanted to find her own happiness without me. What else could there be?" John's voice was thick with frustration, the painful memories rushing back. "It wasn't just about her happiness. She was scared, John. She was afraid that things would never change between you two, that staying with you meant staying stuck. But more than that." Gloria hesitated, clearly unsure how to continue. "She didn't leave because of Duke. She left because she thought you couldn't be the man she needed anymore." John's face paled. He opened his mouth to respond but found himself speechless, the revelation hitting him harder than he expected. "So she didn't leave for him?" he finally managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. Number Duke was a part of it, sure, but she was already checked out emotionally. She felt like the two of you were living in different worlds even before he came into the picture. Gloria's words were heavy, each one like a stone being placed on John's chest. John sat in silence, staring at the floor. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she talk to me about how she was feeling? He muttered, more to himself than to Gloria. She did try, John. But I think by the time you realized what was happening, it was too late. She'd already made up her mind, Gloria said softly. John felt a deep pang of regret, the weight of lost time and missed opportunities suffocating him. I should have seen it. I should have fought harder for her. Maybe if I had, none of this would have happened. Maybe Brenda wouldn't hate me now. Gloria placed a hand on his shoulder. You can't change the past, John. And Janice. She made her choice. But that doesn't mean you can't try to fix things with Brenda. You still have time with her. John shook his head, feeling overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. After what she said to me today, I doubt she'll ever forgive me. Give her time, and be honest with her. She needs to hear your side, to understand the regrets you carry. It might not fix everything, but it's a start, Gloria urged, her tone gentle but firm. John let out a long, shaky breath. You're right. I owe her that, at least. As they sat in silence, John's mind swirled with the revelations Gloria had shared and the regrets that haunted him. The path ahead seemed unclear, but one thing was certain. If he didn't make an effort now, he might lose Brenda forever. After a long, reflective silence, John felt a stirring resolve. The evening was drawing to a close, and the festive lights cast long shadows over the dance floor. The truth about Janice's departure had left him rattled but also brought a strange sense of clarity. He needed to understand more, to dig deeper beyond the layers of pain and misunderstanding that had defined his past decade. Gloria, how do I even begin to fix things with Brenda? She barely wants to look at me, John murmured, his voice a blend of determination and doubt. Gloria, still beside him, gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Start with the truth, John. All of it. It's time she heard everything. From your perspective. She's older now. Maybe she'll understand better than before. John nodded slowly, absorbing Gloria's advice. And what about Janice's family? They blame me for so much. His eyes were troubled, reflecting the turmoil within. You'll deal with them in time. But for now, focus on Brenda. She's your bridge back to them, if that's even possible, Gloria advised, her eyes scanning the room for any eavesdroppers. The music slowed, and a few couples lingered on the dance floor, wrapped in each other's arms. John watched them, their happiness a sharp contrast to his own internal strife. Look, there she is, Gloria whispered, nodding towards Brenda, who stood slightly apart from her new husband, laughing at something a bridesmaid had said. Gathering every ounce of courage, John stepped out of the shadows. He approached Brenda with hesitant steps, every moment feeling like walking through thick mud. Brenda, he called out softly, not wanting to startle her again. Brenda turned, her smile fading into a confused frown as she recognized him. Dad? What are you... How long have you been here? John stopped a respectful distance away, his heart pounding. I've been here a while. I saw the ceremony. You were beautiful, Brenda. His voice was thick with emotion. Why are you telling me this now? What do you want, Dad? Brenda's tone was wary, but her eyes showed a flicker of curiosity. I came to apologize, to explain. There's so much you don't know. So much I never said, John began, his words tumbling out in a rush. About your mom. About why things happened the way they did. Brenda crossed her arms, her expression hardening. You think a few words can fix years of absence? What could you possibly say to change anything? Maybe nothing, or maybe everything. but you deserve to hear it either way. About the night your mom left, about all the times I tried to reach out, John pleaded, his voice earnest. Brenda hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'm listening. John took a deep breath and started from the beginning, pouring out his heart, the mistakes, the miscommunications, and the regrets. He talked about the pressures they faced, about how he and Janice had drifted apart, and how his world had crumbled the night she left. He explained his subsequent efforts to connect with Brenda, all thwarted by legal battles and Janice's relatives. As he spoke, Brenda's face softened, the hard lines of anger giving way to a dawning understanding. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her eyes reflecting a tumult of emotions. When John finished, the space between them felt charged with a new, fragile understanding. Brenda was silent for a long moment before speaking. I need to think about all this. It's a lot. Her voice was small, almost vulnerable. Take all the time you need, John said gently, his own voice barely above a whisper. I'm here when you're ready to talk, or if you have questions, any time. Brenda nodded, a tentative peace settling between them as the last notes of the evening's music faded into the night. The truth was out, raw and unvarnished. It was up to Brenda now to decide the path forward. As John watched her walk back to her husband, he felt a lightness he hadn't felt in years. The future was uncertain, but at least, finally, it was honest. As the wedding reception drew to a close, John stood alone, watching the last of the guests trickle out into the cool night. The conversation with Brenda had drained him, yet he felt a flicker of hope, for understanding, perhaps even forgiveness in time. He was lost in thought when Gloria approached him, her expression both concerned and encouraging. That took a lot of courage, John. How do you feel? Gloria asked, her tone soft. John sighed deeply, feeling the weight of years lift slightly from his shoulders. Relieved, mostly. I finally said what needed to be said. Now it's up to her. His gaze followed Brenda, who was saying goodbye to some late-staying relatives. You've done what you can. That's all anyone can ask for. Gloria reassured him. And whatever happens, you have to believe that it will eventually work out for the best. You've started to mend fences, and that's a big step. John nodded, grateful for Gloria's support. Thanks, Gloria. I couldn't have gotten through today without you. Just then, Brenda approached them, her new husband by her side. She appeared hesitant but resolute, a mixture of emotions playing across her face. Dad, can we talk? Just for a minute? Brenda's voice was calm, but John could hear the underlying nervousness. Of course, John responded eagerly, his heart leaping at her words. Brenda took a deep breath before continuing. I've been thinking about what you said, about everything. I can't pretend that it doesn't hurt, or that I'm not angry, but I'm willing to try, to understand, maybe even to forgive, in time. Her eyes met his, clear and sincere. John's voice trembled as he replied, That means everything to me, Brenda. I know it won't be easy, but I'm here whenever you're ready. We can take it slow. Her husband, who had been quietly observing, now stepped forward, offering his hand. I think it's important for Brenda to have all her family in her life as long as it's positive. I'll support her and you in whatever ways I can. His gesture of solidarity was unexpected, but welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that more than I can say, John said, shaking his hand, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and connection. As the newlyweds prepared to leave, Brenda hugged John briefly, a tentative embrace that held the promise of reconciliation. We'll talk soon, okay? Let's not let more years go by, she said, a slight smile touching her lips. I won't let that happen again. Have a wonderful trip, and we'll catch up when you return, John promised, watching as she walked away, a hopeful lightness in his step. As the last car disappeared from the venue, John and Gloria remained. "Today was a good day, John. It was tough, but good," Gloria remarked, linking her arm through his as they started to walk away. "Yes, it was, and tomorrow might be even better," John replied, feeling the first stirrings of optimism about the future. For the first time in a long time, he believed that redemption was possible, and he was ready to do whatever it took to rebuild the bonds he had broken. Together, they walked into the night, the stars bright above them, whispering of new beginnings and second chances. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If today's story resonated with you, or if you've experienced similar challenges in your relationships, remember you're not alone. We hope this video offers some insight or comfort as you navigate your own path forward. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We value your perspectives and would love to hear your stories too. Join us next time for another profound exploration of the heart's resilience. Until then, take care and keep seeking your truth.